let's talk about Mistborn. I've already done a whole vlog on reading The Final Empire, so I'm going to be keeping my thoughts short on all three, otherwise we'll be here forever. But if you do want an in-depth look at my experience of reading The Final Empire, there is a whole vlog. I'll link it somewhere. I'll probably stick it at the end of the video. But I haven't really spoken much yet of my experience reading the next two. But let's start on The Final Empire, just in case you do want a little snapshot, a little taster of each little book. Yes, I'm aware these are probably some of the most popular books on the fantasy side of BookTube. I actually read Stormlight first. That was my first, I was going to say dip into Brandon Sanderson, but that's more of a dive, isn't it? Going into Stormlight first. But I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. But because of those secret books, I was determined to read even more Sanderson this year. So I'm very happy to have gotten through all of Era 1. So The Final Empire, now that I've read it, I do agree that it is it's a great starter for new people to Brandon Sanderson, even though I know I didn't read it first, but I think it's a good one. And B, it's also a great intro to adult fantasy. I think there's a lot about it that would be a great bridge from either children's or YA fantasy into adult. And for people who already read a lot of fantasy, I think there's still enough about it that is unique and interesting, and it's just really worth the read. So you have the setup of the Final Empire of what if the evil lord won? This is a world where for 1,000 years the evil guy's been in charge. And what starts as a heist to take something from the Dark Lord kind of turns into something bigger over the course of the book. But there are still a lot of mysteries to this series. The magic in it is so good. So I think Sanderson is the most hard magic that I've read. It's the most rules to a magic system that I've seen, and I really enjoyed it, and it's given me inspiration to maybe explore harder magic in my own writing, and maybe put some more rules in place. So The Final Empire features Vin, who is a young orphan girl who's kind of part of a crime gang because it's the only place where she can be looked after, or it's at least a way to get a roof over her head. But people kind of figure out that she's using misting powers. She's using these powers without actually realizing, and they explain that she's taking these trace metals through the utensils she uses and through the water she drinks. And unknown to her, things that have been put down to look are actually seen to be her burning metal and using her gifts. Then the other big character we have is Kelsier, who is the cool guy, who is the leader of the gang, and he is the one who's going to plan most of the heist. And he pulls a gang together, including Vin, and they're going to go take down the Lord Ruler, or at least go steal some stuff for him. At least that's what they think they're going to do. For me, I think once it reached the 150 mark, not that it's bad until that point, I was like just enjoying it, but I think at the 150 mark is where I got really invested. And once I hit that point, I wasn't just reading 30, 40, 50 pages. I was getting through 150 pages in a go. I was binging this and I was through it in a couple of days. I just had so much fun. I said this in my blog, the things that I ended up enjoying the most is Vin attending the noble balls, and I didn't expect that to be a source of such joy for me, but it was. And I kind of missed it in the later novels. But at these balls, that's where she meets Ellen Adventure, who is kind of sympathetic to the cause but is a noble himself. So there's a little bit of... You do wonder if he is someone that they can trust, and Kelsier is very hard in saying that she can't. But you can't help who you fall in love with. I'll leave it at that. So the Final Empire, it went further than I expected it to. I'll try not to spoil things, but I kind of thought it would go one way, or that the whole trilogy would be them heading towards one large goal, and actually that goal came a lot quicker than I thought, and then things become more complicated as we go into book 2 and 3. And that's something I've really enjoyed about the series in general, is it never quite goes the way I think it will. And it's never quite a neat ending until we get to the end, but it definitely takes slightly unexpected directions. So let's move on to the Well of Ascension. So I'll be even more vague in my description of this, so as not to spoil the ending one. But this kind of asks the question of, if you're put in... I mean, I guess if you want to be entirely spoiler-free, then just take my recommendation to read them and stop here, because I think some vague... I'll try my best to be vague, but there's going to be some things that, I don't know, might hint at what comes. That's your warning. But this kind of asks what happens if you become a major political figure. You are put in charge of something for the first time. And what happens when a lot of people don't see you as the amazing, lovely person who saved the world? You know, there's challenges to how you rule. There's a lot of people that disagree with you, because that is how the world and politics works. So politics is a huge part of this book, and I think there's a lot of people who like this book a bit less than the first one, or a lot less than the first one because it's so political. I actually really enjoyed it. I really liked a lot of things. We have a character going through a sort of a training arc, as he's taught to be more confident and know when to take charge, and he kind of has to grapple with the fact that he really wants to be this idealist person who creates this utopian world, but he goes through this journey of understanding that actually that's not going to work with how the world is at the moment. Maybe that can be his goal in 30, 40, 50 years, but for the immediate future, he has to start making some tough decisions and take control. So there's some really great stuff in here. We get a little bit of a mix-up in the dynamics of the characters as we lose people in the first book, and we see people grow up in this one. So we have a little bit of a shift in focus, but we do have Breeze still, who is always such fun to be around. Is there anything else I want to say about this one? We do also go a bit further into the mysteries surrounding what happened at the Well of Ascension and what happened when the Dark Lord took over and got his powers, what is it that took place? We go a bit further into that mystery of, we don't know what the myths are yet, but we start to get hints of what's to come, and because we have these concepts of like the mist and the deepness, and no one really fully understands how everything works. There's a confusion about the myths. Kelsier says that they give them power, but slowly the myths start to pull away from Vin, and there's hints that actually the myths might be dangerous, and we're left wondering what that means. So there's a lot of questions, but there's more hints dropped, and we get further into that side of the world as well. And I kind of think that's the point of the Vin and, I'll not spoil who they are, but Vin and her other half, is that one is the key to the political running of this country, but the other is a bodyguard, but is also filling that role of trying to solve the Mistborn mysteries. I loved it. I maybe liked it slightly less than the first one, but honestly, for me, there's not a lot in it. I still was racing through pages and hurrying to get to the end, because I picked it up maybe a week and a bit before I was due to go on holiday, and I wanted to finish it before I went. I was like, oh, am I pushing it? This is quite a long book. Am I gonna finish it in time before we go? Yeah, I finished it with like days to spare. I raced through this book. And then that brings us to the Hero of Ages. So I will say that I do wonder if the way I reacted to the third book was affected by my own mood at the time. So unfortunately, coming back off that holiday, I got COVID. I've mentioned it before, but it put me in a really bad mood for a while. I was very frustrated and annoyed, because I just felt like I'd been sick on and off for so long before even getting COVID. I'd had colds that lasted a week, and then a cold on a holiday, and then I come back to that. So I wasn't in a great mood, but I still picked this up and carried on, thinking it might be a mood lifter. I was like, oh well, at least I'm coming back to reading. This will be nice. Yeah, the third one, the first half, maybe even 2/3, is pretty gloomy. It's pretty depressing, because the characters are in a really rough situation. Everything is ramped up, and I think that alone would have been fine, but we have this one character who has gone from being a voice of reason, but one who is also quite uplifting. A person who has always helped push towards solving certain mysteries. So they're such an interesting character, and I think they're one of my favourite characters, but they spend a lot of this book in a really dark place because they've lost people important to them, and they've lost their faith. And that's really hard to read. I think what would normally their point of view would have been one of my favourites, and then that changed. They became someone that I didn't want to read about for a while because it was too hard. They were put in such a difficult place. And I think that does show how great Sanderson's writing is, that he can do such fun, exciting, and funny stuff, but then he can bring it down to quite a dark deep level. But for me, it meant that between that and how I was feeling already, I did reach a point where I was like, I don't know if I need a break. I think I'm kind of done. But thankfully, the Sanderlanche came to the rescue, and we get an incredible finale. I will say nothing else about it other than I was thoroughly satisfied with how things turned around, because I felt so strongly about how the emotions of everything was at the start. I was kind of thinking in my head of how I'd score these. I think we'd be saying 5 for Final Empire, 4.5 maybe for Well of Ascension, 2 or 5 even. But then I was like, oh man, is this like a 3.5 for this one? Because it's really rough, but by the end, that's brought that up to at least a 4, if not another 4.5. Like, such a fantastic ending. And I've really enjoyed my time with these. I've loved them so much. And I'm really happy that Stormlight wasn't a one-off and that Sanderson is just going to produce stuff that I love, clearly. And that's really cool. It makes me happy because now I get to read Era 2. How exciting is that? I hope you don't mind that this was more of a casual chat, because I really don't know how to tackle reviewing things where where spoilers are so hard to avoid. But hopefully I've given you a flavour of them. Yes, they are highly rated, and there's a reason why everyone talks about them. But before I go, I'm gonna do something for me, and that is sit and discuss the very ending and have a little spoiler chat. It's just gonna be me gushing about that ending. So yes, this is gonna be full spoilers for the very, very end of Era 2, of Era 1. So if you've not read any of them, please leave, because oh boy, yeah, spoiler town is happening. Okay, how do you want him? Hero of Ages. So, oh my god. The amount of things that get wrapped up. We get answers about what the Mist race and... oh god, what are they called? Does it begin with a K or no? But the shapeshiftery people, we get the connection between them. The connection between... oh my god, I've like a couple of weeks ago I wrap it up and now I've forgotten all the terms. But says people, the terrorsmen, and the big blue ogre things. Oh my god, this sounds terrible. I've forgotten the name of everything. I apologise. But we get the connection between all of those. We figure out what's going on with the Mist. The fact that the Mist attacks aren't attacks, they're the last piece of preservation, this god giving one last little bit of a helping hand to humanity and be like, have some new Mistings and Mistborns. There you go. Like, that was fantastic, because it was really sad to think that, like, something had gone wrong with the Mist and that Kelsier had been wrong about the Mist, you know, and that Vin had lost her safe spot. But no, it's actually all okay. And, like, I just love that the very end, the last fight, it goes so big, and we do lose important people. We lose central people. And I think with another book series, I'd probably be mad about it. Because we get Elend standing up at the end to the Inquisitor version of Marsh, and ultimately just like fighting to the last man, pretty much, and including him and him getting beheaded. Okay, I'm a bit mad about it. Vin basically becoming another god, but then I don't know, kind of. I'm trying to remember what actually happens with her, but she kind of loses. No, she fights. Oh god, what's it called? She fights the other guard, and then they fight to the last, and then they're both dead, and there's now just like a ginger guy on the floor. So Ellen and Vin are just like both dead beside each other, and Sazed comes to them because you with Vin taking all the power, taking up the mists, and becoming a god for one hot minute. You think that maybe that's going to be the end, and she's going to figure it out, and she's going to be god forever. But then, no, there's a left turn, and it's Sazed. It's Sazed taking both powers at once, and the payoff that it's all of his like metal memories and knowledge, all of this knowledge that he's had with him all of this time can now be applied to the entire world. That's such a good payoff. That is amazing. Like, it's not as if I look back and go, oh, I should have... He had all the knowledge of the world. Of course he'd become a god. That's a leap that you just never made. But it just made so much sense, and it fit perfectly. And it's kind of a moment of like having your cake and eat it too, because you have these high stakes and you lose people. You lose a lot of people. Not just in the sense of like characters that we know. This kind of implies that a huge amount of the population of the world is just going to be taken out by these huge world-shifting events. But you also have these pockets of humanity that have bunkered down to survive. And they are the people that will take humanity forward from this point. And because of this, it's allowed Sazed as a god to put the world back to how it was before the Lord Ruler fucked with it. Before the earth was shifted into the wrong place. Before the green went from all the plants, and before ash falls, and like I'm really interested in going to Era 2 now, knowing that this is the world and that they're building it up from nothing, but not quite nothing, because they have the knowledge to start again. Oh, are there going to be religions about Sazed? There probably are, aren't there? I just wanted to gush about it because it was such an amazing ending and I loved it. And I've had no one to talk to about it. Yeah, I don't know if there's many people in my real life I could just say, please read this box set and get back to me in a few weeks when you're finished. So that's what this channel is for, is just to let me have a natter about books. Yeah, that ending was worthwhile. Loved it. And if you're one of the people who stayed for the spoiler chat, thank you. And that's it, really. Thanks for watching. And maybe we'll do this again with Mistborn Era 2. I'll see you later. Bye.